So if you grew up surfing in the 90s around North Orange County, you may remember a shop called H20 in Sunset Beach, California. You may even remember the H20 Winter Classic. Well, all those had to do with this fine man, Vipe. And we're lucky to have Vipe here to get a little history on the shop, the contest, and catch up with what he's doing today. Vipe, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, Mike. Thanks for having this chat with me. Always great to catch up with you.
It's great to have you here. So let's start in the beginning. So H2O opened in 1991 in Sunset Beach. If I remember correctly, that was Burke's shop, and he decided to close up shop. I think maybe to move to San Diego, and here comes you. What what led to you to open the store?
Yeah, I had just graduated from Point Loma Nazarene University, and I had been surfing down there, working at surf shops, and I came up and, I was looking for a job. I wanted to work at Quicksilver or Billabong or one of the surf brands. I was throwing my resume around, and it was right around the time where there was this war that was kind of taking place. It was about to start with Desert Storm and everything, and I was kind of oblivious to it, but the brands were tracking it, and we were kind of heading into a recession. And one day I went surfing with a good friend of mine, and he was like, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm looking for a job. I'm trying to find something." He goes, "Well, we should buy a Burke's surf shop." And so he and I sold whatever we could, begged, borrowed, whatever. And, we talked to Paul, and a few months later, we owned a shop. And the day I opened the store, the first day that I owned the store, I opened the doors, I turned on the TV, and I saw Wolf Blitzer on CNN, and we dropped bombs on Baghdad. So that was the start of H2O.
That's quite a first day.
It was. I was completely oblivious to it, of what was going on. I didn't care. I was just stoked that here I am, and I have a surf shop. So for me, I was really oblivious to the rest of the world, which might have been a good thing.
Sure. Well, speaking of oblivious, you couldn't have been oblivious to the competition around you. To the north, you have Harbor. You had In-Flight. At the time was, I think, the first board riders shop, at least in that area. And then you had Caton. To the south, you had not one, not two, but three Huntington Surf and Sports, because at the time they had their store on 15th Street. You had Jack's. There is I don't know if Bullet was in Sunset or if they moved down to Sakel and changed their name to Sakel down there. Not to
Yeah.
mention Chuck Dent, Rock and Fig. Go down to Coast Surfside. You had Surfside Sports. Lots of competition, and a lot of the big brands were already taken, and those shops wanted to protect selling those brands in their retail locations. How did you separate yourself from the pack and stand out and grow H2O to the shop it became?
Yeah, look, that's a really good question, Mike. Being so young, I was naive about business competition. I really didn't realize how competitive it would be. And I think I had a couple of things that people were really kind of upset about with me. One, I was this young guy. All the other guys that owned shops were older. They'd been in business for a long time. And here this 21-year-old kid walks in, and he's a surf shop owner. So automatically, just because I'm young, I've kind of, got a strike against me. But, I'll tell you what surprised me was I started at Harbor Surfboards, and, I just wanted to break bread with everybody. And my whole thing was like, let me just go introduce myself to these guys, and hopefully something will come out of it. I wasn't thinking about competition. But I went to Harbor, and Robert and the crew there was super cool to me. I went to In-Flight, and those guys were super lame to me. I went to Caton, and wouldn't you know it, a helicopter flying over right now. But I went to Caton, and Glenn was super cool to me. And you forgot one of the shops that was down the street from us was Bruce Jones.
Oh,
Okay.
Bruce Jones.
Bruce Jones was there, and they were super cool to me. I went to HSS down there at Warner and PCH, and they were kind of lame to me. And the Jax guys were cool, but the HSS guys weren't. And then I went down, saw the Surfside guys, and they were super cool to me. So it's like I kind of figured out like where my allies would be, and hopefully this friendship would turn into something more. And I'll tell you, in all honesty, Robert and the guys at Harbor, Glenn and the guys at Caton, Ron and Bobby at Jax, and Duke at Surfside really became allies to me. They mentored me. They became my friends. They were like, call us up anytime if you have any questions. And, so that was great to build those relationships. The other thing that happened was, like you said, it's like all the big brands were taken. And I started calling up the reps, trying to figure out which brands I could get in there. And they were like, oh, sorry, we can't sell to you because so-and-so, and we can't sell to you because of so-and-so. So everything. And, the in-flight and the HSS guys were blocking me. And, totally fair. I get it. It's like, they fostered those relationships. So I was like, okay, well, that sucks. But hey, it's like, do I sit around and whine about it, or do I do something about it? And luckily for me at that time, a couple friends of mine, and one of them, which was my old college roommate, was starting a clothing company, and they were having trouble getting into shops. So we got together, and they're like, man, none of these shops want to pick up our product. And I'm like, well, none of the big brands want to sell me, so why don't we carry your product? So that was Volcom. So we were one of the first 3 shops to carry Volcom. And, after that, we realized that, they were onto something, but we were feeling the same vibe of like surf and skate and snow and music and art. So we kind of like joined their whole program and said, well, let's do this, let's bring in other brands that are against the grain. So it was like SMP and Arnett and all these obscure brands, Excel wetsuits. And we're like, let's go to all these new, fresh brands that are totally different. And we curated the vibe. And for us, it was like, we would much rather be this Volcom vibe than, any of the big homogenized stable brands that were sold at all the other shops. So I think that's what really helped set us out, was curating the brands and then mimicking that vibe through our shop.
Right. Yeah, and you definitely did have that vibe of music, surf, snow. I mean, the vibe at H2O was very high. It was a great place to go visit. And even speaking about the shops and me being a Caton Grom, I remember you coming over to Caton to have conversations with Glenn, and you were just treated like you mentioned, not competition, but another part of the family, another shop, another retailer in the Sunset Beach area, and everybody helped everybody. For example, like you mentioned, you were one of the first 3 shops to have Caton. I'm sorry, Caton, one of the first 3 shops to have Volcom. If someone came into Caton and said, do you have Volcom? It was no problem for that person to say, at Caton, to say, no, but H2O down the street does. Let me call them and tell them you're on your way. And those kind of things happened all the time in North Orange County. And it was great to see that relationship between retailers helping retailers, and surf shops helping surf shops, not knowing what the future was going to be like now, where there's way more competition than the surf shop down the street.
Yeah, in all honesty, Mike, it's like I attribute that to Glenn and Robert's leadership. They were really mature guys, and they could have gone south on me. They could have said, hey, Vipe, sorry, but you know what, your competition. But they weren't. They totally embraced me, and I attribute that to them being really good leaders, and that taught me a lot as well. So it's like Robert, Glenn, Ron, and Bobby, the same thing. And we would always look at it and say, we don't want to carry the same products that those guys do. And we would always say, whatever we could do, let's keep business up in our area. So let's keep it in Seal and Sunset. And whether it was sending people to Bruce Jones or to Caton or to Harbor, that was our, squad, the 4 of us. It's like we just said, let's keep the business in the area and make sure that we service the families. And, like the guys from Caton would come and have lunch with us all the time, and we'd go over their shop. And same thing with the guys at Harbor. They'd come over, and Bruce Jones guys would come over. I mean, we all hung out, so it was really fun.
Well, I think the beauty is also those are relationships that you have today. They're still your friends. That's the great part about true relationships is they last. Going to something you mentioned earlier, the Volcom vibe and the H2O vibe, and just kind of the vibe of the 90s, if you will. It was surf, snow, music, and you and a couple friends sitting inside the shop, not in some major corporate boardroom, literally sitting around the shop, said, let's start a contest that is surf, snow, and we're going to do it in 2 days. We're going to have amazing bands play. And that turned into, well, not turned into, that was the H2O Winter Classic, which, again, launched out of a surf shops where culture is, where culture breeds. And look at all the competitions and events that came later that I would have to say were inspired by the H2O Winter Classic. How did that contest come to be?
Yeah, look, we knew that we had to do some sort of marketing and we had to get creative. And I looked at what the other shops were doing, which wasn't a whole lot. It was yellow pages, sponsoring a couple athletes, and maybe a couple things here and there, maybe some gift certificates at the local contests. And for me, one thing that I looked at was that I don't want to be a surf shop, but I want to be a brand. And if I want to be a brand, I got to think like a brand. And it was like, well, why should the competitions be left up to the big guys and the brands and everything? Why can't a surf shop have its own event? And we said, well, let's not just do a surf event. Let's do something that really, brings the vibe of what we're trying to do and all the things that we're into and the music that we're into. And, we were into like Taylor Steele and all the music he was bringing in, and we loved to surf and we loved to snowboard. So our whole thing was like, let's join up with surfers, snowboarders, and the bands that Taylor and those guys are bringing on, and let's mash all this together. And all of a sudden, the H2O Winter Classic was born. And I mean, we had guys coming from the industry, pro surfers, pro snowboarders. We had Blink 182, Pennywise, Unwritten Law, 30 Seconds to Mars, Jimmy Eat World. I mean, all these amazing bands played our stage first in the early days and everything, and that's where they got their start. And we acted like a brand, and that's what took off. And all of a sudden, ESPN came calling saying, hey, we'd like to put your contest on the air. And, once again, I'm naive. I don't know anything. I'm running a surf shop. I'm running a contest, and now it's on TV, and we're a full production house. And, brands are coming to us going, we want to sponsor your event. All the big guys were coming to us going, we got to be part of this event. It's the raddest vibe out there. We had non-endemic, all these corporate guys coming to us. Honda came to us, and they were like, we got to be part of this. It's exciting. So that really put us on the map. It was televised, it was covered in the magazines, all the surfers were talking about it, the industry guys, everybody was talking about it. And it was hard to believe that it was just a small, like maybe 1,200 square foot surf shop that was broadcasting this giant event that was on TV screens on ESPN all across the US. And everybody wanted to be part of it, and we were having a good time, and that's all that it was, but it was exciting.
Yeah, I mean, just go through the bands that you named right there. I mean, when you think about the era of the mid '90s, I mean, those were the bands. It sounded like that was the soundtrack to a Taylor Steele video, but it was live in front of your face. Before I get off H2O Winter and move to another subject, who were some of the guys that won the most competitions? Just out of curiosities, like who took the most titles? Do you know?
Oh yeah, Troy Eckert. Troy Eckert was the guy. I mean, it's like he and I talk about it all the time, but man, he won 3 Winter Classic titles, and he really was the board sports guy. He was equally good at surfing and snowboarding. And even then, it's like as the years went on, the competition got harder and tougher and everything. So he didn't win as many contests like surf or snow, but he averaged out the balance of coming in maybe like in second or third or fourth in either of the competitions. But, when you combine the points, he won, quite a bit. So Troy Eckert was the board sports king.
Because it was a combination of points from surfing and from snowboarding, correct?
Yeah, that was the big thing. I mean, look, we gave prizes and money to each discipline. So the surfers in the first, second, third got prizes and money, and same thing in snowboarding. But the real money and the big crown was left to the combined point total. So really, there was a lot of opportunities to walk away with prizes and money. But if you really wanted to, have bragging rights, you had to work on the combo.
Gotcha. Now, going back to something you mentioned earlier with starting the H2O Winter Classic, you were focused on being a brand. Now, not only did you have Volcom when nobody had it, and SMP, and help grow a lot of these other brands. You turned the H2O brand into a brand. I'm sorry, the H2O shop into a brand where people were coming in to buy H2O stuff more than the other brands. Clearly, that was planned out. I mean, I guess my question is what is your advice to shops nowadays that want to do the same thing?
Yeah, look, once again, Mike, I wish I could say that it was planned, but I really wasn't that smart. It was really just the fact that organically people loved our vibe, okay? And because they loved our vibe, we just saw that they were coming in and buying more shirts and wanted more things. I mean, stickers, hats, and t shirts. And then one thing we started to do was saying, well, let's just keep adding more and more shirts and designs on a regular basis instead of like 2 designs a year and plastering them on every size t-shirt, long sleeve colorway, sweatshirt, and everything. Let's come up with new designs every couple of months, and let's also come up with designs whenever we see something cool. So we really put that on there. But there were guys that were coming in that were talking about private label, and they'd come in with like shorts or patches or socks or towels, and we'd be like, yeah, we'll take it. Here's our logo. We were just like, yeah, we felt so strong about our brand knowing that people would buy it, that
Right.
for us it was like, yeah, let's just stick our logo on it, and if it doesn't sell, we'll give it away, and if it sells, great. But we realized years later that the H2O Winter Classic was doing so much for us, and our private label was really driving our sales. I mean, it was 50% of our revenue. And after that, it was like Volcom and these obscure brands and everything. But what I would say to retailers today is that build the brand, build your store as a brand, and my recommendation would be like 50 to 60% of your sales should be from private label. 20 to 25% should be from hyper local brands, guys that are starting up small brands in your neighborhood, whether it's like your zip code, your county, your state, your coast, whatever it might be, but support that local vibe. And then the remainder, find the anchor brands like the large guys. Figure out, are you a Quicksilver vibe? Are you a Billabong vibe? Are you a Volcom vibe or Hurley vibe? Whatever it is, figure out which one you are and rally around that brand.
That makes perfect sense, and that's some sound advice. So everything's going great, and then 1999 comes, and I've heard this story a couple of times, and it still makes me laugh. What made you decide to close? Why did you say we're doing so well? I'm shutting the doors.
Yeah, a couple of things were happening. One, I really was getting burned out with the hustle and drive and everything that was going on. It was really wearing on me. Plus, I had some other friends who were starting up really fun companies and brands. And for me, it was like, hey, it's like, I want to go play with these guys. They're looking at a bigger picture. I'm constrained in these 4 walls and this roof and everything. I want to get out and spread my wings and try something new. I loved doing the H2O Winter Classic, and it was really fun. But I remember one thing that happened was I went to go talk to Duke, and I wanted him to kind of like give me some advice, and it was so funny. I go down and talk to Duke at Surfside, and we're chatting, and he's just going off, man. It's like he's being salty dog and everything, and just kind of complaining about the industry. And God bless Duke. I mean, the guy is like a heart of gold. But I stopped him in the middle of his rant, and I go, Duke, I go, stop. I go, man, I go, you just made me realize I don't want to be you when I get older. You are so salty. I don't want to be you. I'm getting out of the surf shop business. And I walked out of his shop, and I came back and I said, I'm out of the surf shop business. I'm going a different direction. But I attribute Duke for help me make that decision.
Well, I will say this. I mean, it worked out good for you personally, but there's a hole in Sunset Beach now where H2O used to be, because it was such a great shop, and it was such a blessing to have H2O in Sunset Beach. So let's talk about then what you did after that. I mean, you held many jobs. You can go through them or not, and but you've also started a couple things on your own. You're also working with the Ocean Institute. What's Vipe up to post H2O and now?
Yeah, so post H2O, I really started to put my marketing and branding to skills to use, and started working on a marketing agency to bring in non-endemic brands into the action sports industry. I mean, at this point, Warped Tour has taken off, X Games has taken off, and that was attributed to the H2O Winter Classic. You know, that's what ushered in the Warped Tour and the X Games. It started with us, and those guys took the ball, saw an opportunity, and capitalized on it, which was great. And then guys that worked for me were going out and starting companies too, whether it was like Chad at Nixon or, you know, any of the other guys out there. So it was great to see, you know, the guys that I got to work with were really starting to find their entrepreneurial spirit and go out there and start exciting brands. But I wanted to be in the marketing agency business. I wanted to kind of think big and take a look at what could I do on a bigger scale. And our first client was a little beverage company out of Austria called Red Bull. So we were responsible for launching Red Bull in 1998 with their marketing strategy around action sports and everything. So that was a fun project. I had no idea where it was going to go, but we knew the vibe that we wanted to share with them, and they had a great group of people that got it. They listened to us, they worked with us, they were open to our ideas of collaboration. So, you know, Red Bull, you know,
Yeah.
that was directly after H2O. And then I just continued building on the agency, working with the Billabong guys, working with the Quicksilver guys, ASR a little bit, Surfrider Foundation, just helping them out with marketing initiatives. And then I got the opportunity to kind of launch into another career, which I'm involved in now, which is serving on boards. And it started with Surfrider Foundation, sitting in a room with a bunch of smart people, strategizing around, you know, how do we fulfill and amplify the mission of the Surfrider Foundation to protect our ocean waves and beaches. Met some incredible people, and that continued for me to help build some skills that I could use in the boardroom. So, you know, now that's what I do. I work with a lot of nonprofits, some corporate brands. I sit in a boardroom. I think big picture strategies, look at a lot of financial statements and everything. And I advise guys on starting brands. So, you know, get to have a lot of fun. And, you know, newly appointed homeschool dad as well.
I think we all have that job. Well, a lot of us.
Yeah.
You know, but I really do want to touch on. I mean, you do a lot for the ocean, to keep it clean, to keep people educated, to even all the way to, you know, keeping the government educated. I know you had a chance to go to Washington and speak on behalf of the ocean, for lack of a better term. Just briefly tell me what, as a surfer, as a surf shop owner, as a human, what does the ocean mean to you?
Look, to me, the ocean has given me my career. You know, without the ocean, I don't know where I would be. And not only that, but the surf industry as a whole took me in, you know. So it's like I feel as if that I owe the surf industry and everybody that works in it some sort of give back. And for me, that give back is, how do I use my experience and knowledge and passion and concern that I have to protect the ocean? Because without a healthy ocean, the surf industry as a whole suffers. You know, if there's an oil spill, beaches are closed. If there's dirty water, beaches are closed, and that ripples into surf shops and the brands and the community and everything. So for me, I just found a way to use my voice to raise concern about why we need to protect our ocean, not just for the economy, not just for the local community, not for all the living creatures in it, but also for an industry that raised me and gave me all these incredible opportunities. So, you know, I'm a huge advocate for our ocean, and with that, I'm a huge advocate for our industry, and I'll use my voice every opportunity I can at the state, at the local, state, and federal level. And like you said, you know, I'm a surf guy, okay? I'm just a surfer, but when Congressman Alan Lowenthal, you know, sends you a letter inviting you to come testify before members of Congress in D.C. about why it's important for our federal government to protect our oceans, you answer the call and you go up there with, you know, armed with knowledge and everything. So I felt it was an honor for me to, you know, carry that voice of the industry for everybody.
Well, speaking of honor, I got to say it's an honor to be your friend. It's an honor that I met you in the early 90s when you did open H2O and you had these long flowing locks of love and you were just a surf shop owner to see where you've come now. I do want to close on a couple things. Speaking of your voice, if you want to learn from Vipe and get some knowledge, we can always go to propagandahq.net where you're helping retailers have a voice. A lot of retailers that don't get a voice, you're working on giving them a voice. We've partnered on Livewire, where we do retail updates every week directly from the store floor. Um, and you're working on bringing more knowledge to retailers, the industry, and just sharing what you've learned in, gosh, 30 years of surf retail and surf industry knowledge. So thank you so much for that. Um, we talked about it earlier. I just want to go over it and maybe you can break it down one more time
Okay.
for retailers that are watching. 50% your own brand.
Yep.
Was it 20 to 30% hyper local?
20 to 25% hyper local. Anything that's made or created in your zip code, your county, your city, your state, your coast, anything like that. Curate and support from your backyard as much as you can. And then the remaining percentage, find the anchor brands that complement the vibe that you want to put out. Make it different, make it a destination, make it to where people want to rally around it. Don't make it just like another shop down the street that carries the same stuff or the same stuff that's available online. Differentiate yourself. That's what customers want, and that's what I look at all the time. I'm a customer as well, but I also walk into a lot of surf shops and I see a lot of sameness, which leads to homogenization, and I think the consumers feel the same way. So look at this as an opportunity to hit the reset button and rebuild an incredible brand for your community.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Don't let the brands shape your store. Think of your store as your own brand, and do those brands complement what you're already doing? Because people come in and they want something special. That's why it's specialty retail.
Yep,
Well,
absolutely. You nailed it. You nailed it. Absolutely. Create your own brand and your own vibe, and then curate around it.
awesome. Well, Vipe, thank you so much for sitting with me for a little bit, and I look forward to talking to you down the road.